Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're jumping right into something that, well, it really asks us to reboot how we think about love. The title we're unpacking is pretty provocative.
Yes.
Beyond the couple capstone, your relationship was never broken.
Yeah, that title immediately tells you we're stepping into a space of radical refusal. We're looking at a synthesis piece, a capstone essay by Jaime Hoerricks, a PhD.
Okay.
And it pulls together this long series of insights about specifically autistic love and what the author calls relational coherence.
And the mission for you, the listener, is to really try and internalize the synthesis. We need to figure out why the author is saying that if you shift your focus from, fixing things to prioritizing meaning, that's the real path.
It is. And it's not a new program to adopt.
Right. It's more like a kind of intellectual damage control.
That's a great way to put it. It absolutely is. Because if you can accept that first premise that the relationship is already coherent, already intact, it just changes everything.
How?
You stop scrambling for fixes. You start moving toward a deeper understanding and, I think, integration.
Okay, so let's unpack that, this core tension. What is the damage that the author is trying to refuse here? Because, your relationship was never broken. That's such a powerful line.
It's a refusal of the idea that relationships are provisional. The whole thesis is that autistic love is coherent when it's defined by its own internal meaning.
Not by some external checklist.
Exactly. The damage comes when we treat relationships as provisional, as if they're, pending validation or pending conformity to some default template or waiting for some kind of mandated repair.
So the damage isn't just someone from the outside criticizing you. It's that internal feeling of always being incomplete or deficient just because you don't fit some neurotypical mold of what intimacy is supposed to look like.
Precisely. You're constantly measuring yourself against a template that just doesn't fit your reality, so you're forced to conclude you're the one who's flawed. This framework just bits. It refuses that as a starting point. And it offers this quiet relief of realizing, oh, the problem wasn't the relationship. It was the arbitrary metrics we were using. Nothing was ever broken.
It was just misunderstood.
It was just misunderstood.
That idea of quiet relief feels critical. It shifts the whole foundation because if you don't start from a place of deficit, you don't need a framework for repair. You need one for integration.
Yes.
But how does that integration actually work?
So this is where the capstone concept gets really interesting. The author notes that by the time they reach this final essay, the work, it had already been done. By the body, by the mind, through all the previous writings.
So the capstone isn't the finish line. It's not like achieving a goal.
No, it's the moment where the understanding stabilizes. It's where it can finally be integrated. It's not about ambition, or striving for some perfect future. It's about recognizing and just consolidating what's already known.
Well, the heavy lifting was already done.
Precisely. The essay itself isn't a new model to adopt. It's more the linguistic act of circling something that was already intact.
Yeah.
It's the point where the understanding, which was already there, finally gets put into clear language.
I find that so fascinating. That suggests this pre-existing coherence. If the work is done and the meaning is there, we have to ask, how does that coherence arrive?
Right.
Because that cognitive process seems to be what sets this all apart, and it directly explains why those repair narratives just don't work.
The author describes reaching this point feeling a little weary, but they're quick to differentiate this. It's not like physical exhaustion. It's the profound tiredness that comes after a long immersion. Yeah. It's that intellectual fatigue that happens when your mind has been holding too many holes in suspension.
Yeah.
And they finally just land.
It sounds like a high-speed internal process that's running way beyond our ability to articulate it in real time. The source actually calls the result a cognitive hangover.
And hangover is the perfect word because it's not confusion. It's the residual feeling left by that intense process. It's the residue of having been flooded by meaning faster than language can politely metabolize.
Wow, that phrase, that is incredibly descriptive. It captures the sheer speed and totality of it. You know something completely deeply before you have the ABC vocabulary to explain it.
It's coherence arriving all at once.
Right.
And that speed, that totality, that's the clue to the cognitive style at play here.
Yeah.
It's the gestalt processor.
Okay.
If you process meaning in gestalts, in whole patterns, you do not assemble it step by step. You don't start with A, then go to B, and then conclude C.
You see C first. The whole shape of it just lands.
Exactly. The meaning arrives whole and stable.
Yeah.
The work that comes after, the writing, the talking, that's just circling back later to name what the body and mind have already understood.
Which is why the essays arrived braided and insistently simultaneous.
Yes. They weren't sequential arguments building to a climax. They were different facets of the same whole, being described one by one.
Let's apply this to relationships then, because this is the core of refusing repair, isn't it? A sequential processor sees a conflict and they think, okay, there's a communication breakdown here. Let me find a tool to fix that specific breakdown.
It's a piecemeal repair model. And it's incredibly frustrating if you're not a sequential processor. The gestalt processor in that relationship, they don't see communication failure A, B, and C. They immediately recognize the holistic pattern, the system.
The way the relationship as a whole functions.
Right. And they know instantly if that system is intact, even if the tools they're using to communicate are, wrong or clumsy. So the repair narrative just seems nonsensical.
Because you don't need to fix the relationship.
You don't. You just need to find the right language and tools to reflect the coherence that's already there. The effort shifts from external validation, are we doing this right, to internal integration. How do we name the reality we already inhabit?
What stands out to you about this? Because it seems to explain why the whole conventional relationship industry, built on step-by-step advice, it's doomed to fail for anyone who operates this way.
It fails because it assumes a deficit. It assumes the relationship is an object you have to build and then maintain. The Gestalt view says the relationship is a stable, integrated phenomenon that just needs to be recognized. The effort isn't construction, it's slow, deep recognition.
That non-linear path is the foundation. And since these ideas arrived braided, let's look at the sheer scope of what was explored in the series. It really shows how broad this refusal of default intimacy is.
For sure. The individual pieces cover territory that is so often ignored or even pathologized by that conventional couple-centric view. It's a complete refusal of the template.
So lay out some of these braided concepts for us.
The series went into things like relational autonomy, queer-platonic bonds, the actual necessity of solitude.
Oh, that's a big one.
A huge one. And also relational ecosystems, customized monogamy, and this idea of multiplicity without loss.
That is a comprehensive rejection of the idea that a relationship has to look one certain way. Let's dig into a couple of those. How does solitude, for example, refuse that default intimacy story?
Well, in this context, solitude isn't a sign of distance. It's not a sign that the relationship is failing. It's identified as necessary infrastructure for relational capacity.
Infrastructure.
Yeah. For a neurodivergent person, solitude is often where cognitive recovery and processing happens. So by demanding that relationships include robust space for it, you refuse the narrative that intimacy has to equal constant availability.
Which links right back to relational autonomy, doesn't it? If I need solitude to recharge my system, then prioritizing that need is an act of relational strength, not a breakdown.
Absolutely. Relational autonomy is about self-determination within the relationship. You get to determine the rules, the tempo, the needs of your specific bond, instead of just adopting external rules about who you have to be for each other.
And what about something like customized monogamy or multiplicity without loss? How do those push back?
Well, the couple capstone idea is that a traditional hierarchical monogamous couple is the ultimate goal, right? The highest form of love.
The peak of the mountain.
Right. Customized monogamy rejects that by saying, look, even if two people choose exclusivity, they have to co-create the terms that work for them. You don't just inherit a prepackaged template. And multiplicity without loss, that refuses the zero-sum thinking.
Yeah.
The idea that adding a deep connection with one person automatically diminishes your bond with another, it allows for a whole relational ecosystem where different bonds can exist without being ranked by scarcity.
So the synthesis is powerful because it shows all these separate pieces: solitude, autonomy, non-hierarchical bonds. When you put them together, they form this integrated picture of autistic love that is coherent by its very design.
Yes, it doesn't need external repair. It's not. If you connect this to the bigger picture, the whole synthesis is defined by what it refuses. It refuses the pressure to squeeze these complex, custom-built relationships into that narrow provisional framework that will inevitably judge them as broken.
That's a crucial point. You have to first reject the idea that you're starting from a deficit. By just declaring your relationship was never broken, the author clears the space for the true synthesis to even be seen.
It allows the gestalt to finally be named. If you look at these relationships through that sequential, repair-focused lens, they look chaotic or unfinished. But if you look at them through the Gestalt lens, they're perfectly formed systems just operating outside the norm.
So this deep dive has revealed a really profound shift for you, the learner. We've moved from a framework based on, repair and provisionality, always waiting for that external stamp of approval, to one based on recognizing an intact coherence.
And prioritizing a meaning that arrives whole. The beauty of the capstone concept is that it assures us that the intellectual part is just catching up to what the body already understands.
The relationship was already intact.
It was. The capstone is just the process of finding the right words to describe the whole gestalt that was already stabilized internally. It flips the whole idea of relationship work on its head.
It's not about strenuous fixing.
No, it's about slow, deep, linguistic recognition of what is already there. And that changes everything.
So here is a provocative thought for you to consider as we wrap up. If Gestalt processing means you recognize meaning whole rather than assembling it piece by piece, where else in your life might coherence arriving all at once already be waiting? What concepts or projects or beliefs are you trying to assemble or fix right now that might in fact already be complete, simply needing the right language to stabilize their pre-existing form? What complex system are you circling that is already whole? We'll catch you next time.